Welcome to another episode of the Speakeasy Podcast. I am thrilled to have David Marr, principal recruiter at Coalfire. He has over 10 years of experience in recruiting, sourcing, and staffing. What I love about David is that he gives back to the recruiting community, and he has grown his network to almost 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. Can you share a little bit about your journey and get the audience up to speed?
Long story short, I fell into recruiting. I started off in agency, then I did some staffing, I did some contracting, and also corporate. Most recently, after being laid off from my last role at Indeed at the end of March 2023, I had interviewed with about 12 different companies, made it to the final round for full-time positions. And on the 12th round, I finally landed. Prior to the current company I'm at, I was doing contract recruiting to pay my bills. With the free time I had, I was trying to figure out, and I saw the continuing trend of so many companies laying off their talent acquisition department and just people being impacted. And I remember what it was like in 2001 and what it was like in 2008 when I was impacted previously. And I set up some things for myself so that way I always knew who was hiring and what jobs were out there. And what initially I set up for myself, I was like, I can leverage this to help so many former colleagues of mine. And then pretty soon it was like, there was such a need that was way greater than even the former colleagues I had, and when you know of so many people in your industry that you have learned from and that you've benefited from, and you see all this talent that's basically sitting on the bench. And like, if you're a company that's hiring, like in my mind, at least, you should take advantage of the opportunity and build your dream team. There's still so many amazing, talented people that are on the market right now.
So you got laid off. You've had that experience 2 times in your career already, and you built different systems in place to get it back to work. What are some of those things that prepared yourself to land that next opportunity?
So I learned that after the first time, you don't have an income and you're relying on unemployment, right? Usually you got to do whatever you got to do to pay your bill. I have a good work ethic that I was taught from my upbringing. And I immediately went to a job I did back in college, which was like bartending, which I did on the side. So I was bartending also on top of the unemployment while I focused my time on finding a contract opportunity. The reason I do contract first, when I say contract, I mean, you provide your services within talent acquisition, whether it's recruiting or sourcing or a combination of the two, and make that available to companies. Because typically when economies are laying off, work at those companies is still being done. But because they don't have the budget or headcount to add new full-time or FTE headcount, the work is typically done on a project budget. So that's where contractors and contracting comes into play. So there's a huge opportunity in many different ways that you can get into contracting, but probably one of the easiest places I would start with is building relationships and connecting with, companies that place contract talent acquisition talent. So some of the larger places that I'm aware of is like Korn Ferry, Sourcing Wizards, Kelly OCG, Osana Consulting Group, the Wellington Group, Arlington Resources, Flex Execs. And a lot of them will have either, local in your region or national clients that they can place. So Sourcing Wizards, for example, I know places people all across the country. And they have a lot of clients that are tech oriented.
When you got laid off initially, there's probably some steps of getting frustrated and then figuring out what's next. Was there a process that you had to go through?
So I loved working at Indeed. It was probably one of my favorite places I've ever worked for. I had amazing managers, amazing colleagues. The company culture was fantastic, and they really took care of their employees. And when we got the sudden news, it was a shock to the 1,000+ people that were impacted at that time, which again would have been at the end of March of last year. And because I had such a positive, I guess, like, we'll say, relationship with the company, if that makes any sense, you have to kind of think of it like a breakup, right? So you have to like mentally position yourself knowing that you're basically going freelance again, right? You're basically on the market, and I don't like using this analogy, but one of the best analogies when it comes to the whole job search process is it's like dating or the dating process. And, you put yourself out there and you have lots of conversations, AKA interviews, and you spend a lot of time networking, doing things to try to capture the attention of the potential employer that you're trying to work for. Basically, just have to mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically unplug yourself. And I would recommend taking at least a week or two just to clear your minds, come to reality, come to terms with what the reality is. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to go to the gym and pound a bag or pump weights or do whatever you need to do to get that stress out. And you should really position yourself when you're interviewing or positioning yourself when you're going through this process. So you're able to be in a good mental state when you do have the opportunity to quote unquote present yourself, aka interview, that you're able to interview in the right mindset. If you don't have the right mindset, you need to clear your head and work through whatever it is you need to before I would recommend interviewing. The reason I say that is because if you are only just applying to jobs and you're focused solely on all the negative rejections that you get from applying to all these different positions, then you're going to unfortunately not have the right type of energy or mindset that's going to come across in your interview. And it's not going to be the most effective interview. I also prepare for every interview I have. I do research. I, make sure to understand the people, understand the company, the culture, questions ready to go, and really try to, be as prepared as you possibly can. You can't be, 100% prepared, but when you interview, just like in dating, you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. So anytime you take a position, you want to make sure that it's the right move for you.
Through your 12 interviews, there's companies out there that it didn't align with your goals, your expectations, whether it's a salary, their scope and impact. How did you handle those situations?
In some cases, it came down to the final interview and it was a conversation with the recruiter. What they wanted to pay, didn't align with what, I needed to make for my year's experience. So we ended up agreeing to go our separate ways and they, went with somebody that was less experienced. Of the 12, I would say about 8 of them, they decided it was kind of similar to that situation where they decided to go with basically someone less experienced. 2 of them I was runner up on, meaning I was the second candidate that, silver medalist, if you will. One of them, the job is canceled. And what's interesting is I've seen people from those companies that have been laid off since that time. The last company which I landed the current job with, they approached me because my background aligned with what you have. So I think some of the things that you need to do to make yourself be able to be found is to position yourself and make sure your resume and your LinkedIn profile are always up to date and that you evolve it as your career evolves. So that way the keywords and the projects you work on or the companies you work for and industries and different expertise you have, you can, be found through Boolean search strings that other recruiters and sourcers are looking for when they're looking to hire or grow their team. The other thing I would say that was really key in most of the interviews I got, it wasn't from applying the job. It was through my network. It was networking with former colleagues, letting them know, hey, I'm on the market. If you hear anything, let me know. And basically being diligent and building relationships and networking with different people that I knew or didn't know, or meeting new people, just basically getting yourself out there and trying to help people while you're helping yourself. The biggest mistake I see people making when it comes to networking is they focus solely on, it'll be something like, hi, I was just laid off from ABC company and I'm a recruiter and I've got 5 years experience. Do you know to be hiring? Like you have to flip the mindset, right? You think about it like this. Networking is like making a deposit. Every time you network with someone, it's like making a deposit into a bank account. Okay. And in order for you to withdraw from the bank account, you have to first put into the bank account. It's a long game, not a short game. And the other big mistake I see people making is they don't take the time to truly learn how to network, and they don't invest in growing their networking skills and trying to assist people in their network. So networking doesn't have to be some very complicated, highly strategized approach. over time, if you do it naturally, it just becomes part of how you communicate with people. And also, people a lot of times will stop networking when they land a job. So it's like, hey, I need to network now because I'm out of work. And then they stop networking. Well, if you're in recruiting and talent acquisition, part of our job is to network for our companies, for ourselves, for our profession, for your former colleagues. It's your responsibility. And to whom much is given, much is required. If you have skills in certain areas, we all have different skills, talents, and abilities. If you're not putting them to use in a way that, blesses others around you, then I think you're doing a disservice to the world essentially in your community. And it may be selfish. You may not think of it that way, but if you're honest and humble, if you love the talent acquisition space, and this is where you want to be for the long term, you should master networking and you should never turn off a network. Let's say, Dan, let's say we lived in the same town and we were neighbors and whatnot, and you were talking about how you're going to you needed someone to come in and paint your house. Well, if I just had somebody that painted my house, and I knew the person, I would connect the two. Say, hey, I just had so-and-so paint my house, you might want to talk to them. And that way, you can help meet your need, but also help someone else get connected that has that expertise. Same
I
thing.
was just talking to somebody about the chambers of commerce and these networking groups. How it really started, it happened, a couple hundred years ago, people have been doing this, is if you are a part of that, it's a networking opportunity. And typically those conversations are had. What's your skills? How can you help? And typically they go to that chamber of commerce people first, and then they branch out, because when business is received, business is given, and it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
It goes back to the relationship piece. And if you're not doing it and helping other people out, you're not going to be able to receive the advice, the experience, anything that they're going to give you, because you haven't put your deposits in. I think you do a really good job at giving the deposits to everyone else so that you can cash in when you need. Sometimes the misconception is I'll talk to everybody and it's take.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get anywhere in life doing that.
If you went into a bank and said, hey, I want to take out $1 million, if you haven't made $1 million with a deposit, you're basically a bank robber, right?
100%. And there's a ton of bank robberies happening in the talent acquisition field currently right now. The one thing you do to help others is you've been sharing job postings for the recruiting community. Walk me through that experience. How did that start? And how has it impacted many individuals?
I have an email address that I have set up a long time ago that always feeds me job postings and all sorts of things. And I have, probably 70, 80 different sources it pulls from. I have Google alerts that are set up. So everything basically funnels and feeds into it. So I utilize it a lot for my own job search when I have a job search, and also to help former colleagues when they're like, hey, I'm looking for a job here. And, I basically will monitor the posts and be able to share job leads and so forth with us. So it started initially by me trying to help my former Indeed colleagues. That, is how it started. And then again, as, company after company and former colleagues of mine from other companies that are at different places were impacted. And, those in our community were impacted. I just saw the need to have the potential and the need for someone to step up and help basically fill the void.
Any cool stories out of that you've seen?
So I've met a lot of really cool, interesting people through it. And, some people were like left their, let's say their talent acquisition director position to start a organization to help recruiters, basically, navigate these uncharted waters. Cause a lot of people have never experienced the layoff, especially if with the vast number of hiring into the talent acquisition space. So a lot of people that haven't been in this space for, 5+ years, haven't experienced a layoff. And, so a lot of people were stressed out, and you saw all these sad, discouraging posts on LinkedIn where people were basically like pouring out their hearts, talking about how they, just lost their position and how it was impacted. We've all seen posts about people that have mentioned that they're about to lose their house, or a single parent that, has kids that they're trying to provide for. And, People have had to reinvent themselves. One thing that I did learn from like 2008 layoff is a lot of people. So recruiting and talent acquisition is a very dynamic space, and there's a lot of skills and talents you develop from it that are transferable into other areas, such as sales, such as marketing, such as, some people started resume writing businesses. I do know that a lot of people have told me that they've landed from the lists I send out, and a lot of people have interviewed.
With that, you're helping other people, but sometimes it helps yourself. How does it affect you personally, helping other people out?
I guess I'm wired the way I'm wired is I like to help people, and it's just, it's rewarding knowing that my efforts are, blessing so many people in our community. In some cases, it's through my conversations, I identify people that can benefit from meeting other people in our industry. So, like, let's say you identify certain potential in certain people that are, let's say, up and coming, and trying to help get them visibility and connected with the right people, so that way they can continue to grow and flourish their careers. Also, connecting like-minded people together, um, and giving people the opportunity to showcase what they can do.
Who has taught you that? Was it a specific leader that you worked with? Well, who taught you this way of thinking and making an impact?
Honestly, I think it's just a combination of my upbringing and just continuing to evolve and, learning something new every day. Like, at first I was attending just webinars and really like trying to apply and like intentionally growing and developing and getting better at my craft. And you ask my wife, like, I attend webinars like on the regular. I've had a lot of great managers, that have encouraged me and challenged me in certain areas to get better. So I'm not a shy person. So one of the things that, like, for example, that I try to intentionally do is you have two ears and one mouth, and if you're not afraid to ask questions and jump in, you know, there's a lot of people that need to process information more and don't feel comfortable just jumping in and just speaking. So it's like intentionally learning to take a back seat or take a step back, allow those people to get their questions in. And yeah, you may know the answer, but people won't ask questions or they're afraid. So if the questions that I think people need to ask aren't asked, I'll wait and then I'll ask them. That's an example.
What does community mean to you? And how do you think it's evolved over the last couple of years?
So when I think of community, at first it was initially just like, my initial former colleagues and companies I worked for, like, you're on the local level. And then it became the regional level and national level and then international level. And where I've seen it really, I guess, witnessed it, what true community, when I think of the talent acquisition community, was attending a SourceCon and just watching how the speakers and everybody was so passionate about it, just like brought those passion and the ideas and just like freely shared and, helped edify and build up those around them. And I still have a lot of, great relationships from the only SourceCon I've ever attended, which was over a decade ago. Since that time, I've met a lot of other people and, entities and companies and different folks that are trying to help in their own way, right? Through whether it's a blog or they do trainings or, podcasts, things of that sort, and just trying to help, be a voice and give people encouragement and give them hope.
I think you hit the nail on the head when we talk about community. It starts, typically it's your own circle, then your company that you're working for, then you brought regional, international, worldwide. A lot of the folks currently right now, I believe, are searching for that next community to be a part of because they built the networks within the company that they work for, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And they think, hey, this is it. I know everything about TA. But once they do maybe get laid off, they realize the world is much bigger and there's so many other people within the community. And now they're searching and they're finding the community.
I would challenge anybody that thinks that they know everything about talent acquisition to attend a SourceCon and really put their thoughts to the test. I knew a lot when I attended my first SourceCon, but what I learned and what I realized I didn't know was just as vast as what I thought I knew. So to master our craft, it takes a lot of, just like a professional athlete, right? It takes diligence and hard work and dedication and, you know, giving it 100% every day. And that's really what it takes. You can learn something new every day, and you actually should be learning something new every day.
In that job search, any recommendations for people that are searching, utilizing that recruiting sourcing abilities to land that next opportunity?
Absolutely. So you should be researching companies and making a target company list that you want to work for. Um, yeah, through job postings that you see, but also companies that haven't posted jobs. And some people are drawn or have a lot of experience in certain industries, which is more likely where you're going to find a position. Others are drawn to, different types of companies, like, in a certain geography, or, they like to just randomly network and, grow and get experience over here and over there. And I think a lot of it boils down to learning from others. There's many amazing people in our industry, like Steve Levy, Brian Fink, that generously and freely give of the community, and they share their ideas and basically help build up those around them. And they take time to intentionally every week assist others. So
For sure. I love what you're doing in this community, the things that you're doing to make a forever impact on families, on careers. Any last minute advice as you landed your next role, you're here, to the people that are still searching as we wrap up?
I would say that don't be afraid to ask for help. And, you know, if I can help you, reach out. If Dan can help you, reach out. You should absolutely be attending the recruiter therapy. It's a great place to, realize that you're not going through it alone. You need to have a plan, and I would highly recommend that you keep some resemblance of core business hours, where, instead of working, let's say 8 to 5, right? Maybe if you're a morning person, do 8 to noon, or, noon to 4, or whatever, and use that time as your dedicated job search time. That way you can still enjoy your free time that you have. Because even when you're unemployed, there's things that you can be doing to invest in yourself and your family and hobbies, and, taking care of your whole person. I think that's very important. By having those core business hours, you have dedicated time on Monday through Friday that you can schedule interview and that you can plan. So intentionally plan out and treat your job search like it's a full-time job. Because it takes a lot of effort and it can be draining, and, you're, for every no you get, you're that much closer to a yes. And don't lose hope. Don't, get discouraged. Don't, think that you're not good enough. I've seen a lot of people battle, and I myself had dealt with this earlier on in my career, imposter syndrome. Just because someone else has done it doesn't mean that it's not something that you can do. And that might be what you need to get from, A to B or B to C, or whatever that is where you're at. United you stand, divided you fall, right? I have been told, don't share all these job leads. You're just going to make it that much more competitive. No, that's the wrong mindset. That's a short-term mindset. Long-term mindset is, you got to realize that companies are going to hire if they're going to hire. And whether or not you share it or don't share it, I would rather share a job that somebody interviews for and gets hired for than them not have found that, right? Because in the end, you're making positive deposits, right?
Before you started sharing and now, what were your followers on LinkedIn?
My followers, probably because I've been doing this over a year now, have grown to, like you said, around 50,000. I think before it was like, let's say like 10, 15.
That's crazy. I think you've done it the right way when you look at followers, because it's not just about the followers, it's about the impact and how you are going to do it. But I wanted to bring it up because I want to make sure that that you're making an impact, the recruiting community that is changing lives. So I just want to say again, thank you for doing that. And if you are searching for the next role, every single company is going to ask you, what have you been doing since you've been let go or laid off? And what David said was to get involved. get involved in the community, up-level your skills, go to these specific webinars, and let the company know that you are actively involved within the community, because your network is your net worth. And sometimes companies hire based off that specific experience to help impact the overall job that you're interviewing for. As we wrap up, any closing thoughts, any last words?
I would say to be open to other working arrangements within the talent acquisition space. I learned a lot from my time in the agency world. And I have a lot of former bosses and colleagues that are still in the agency world that are very talented and very successful. So don't be afraid if you're on the corporate side to join an agency. You learn a lot from it. Don't be afraid to, um, you know, do freelance. There's sites like hirescale.io and Paraform that you can sign up for to offer your services to companies, and get connected with places like freelancerecruiters.com as be able to still apply your craft and get paid potentially, but it's doing something that uses your skill set outside of just looking for a job. And
Love it.
you can always make more money, but you can't get your time back. So how you allocate your time management is probably one of the most important things that you have to learn how to master.
Well, as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to say thank you so much, David. You've been a wealth of knowledge, and the impact you're making is going to be changing lives for generations to come. To the audience, I encourage you to get involved in the Hire Easy community, the upcoming webinars, and the Outbound Recruiting Academy. All of that we have in place 100% free for you guys to elevate your skills. Connect with David, follow him on LinkedIn and other social platforms. So again, thank you so much, David, for your time, your wisdom, and keep doing what you're doing because your heart's in the right spot. So thank you.